Hey Luke, so I recently finished the Mass Effect trilogy, which was amazing, and I remember hearing about the upcoming game. Do you think it'll release this console generation, and have you heard anything?
I have heard things. But it's nothing like really actionable. They are basically what happened after Dragon Age Veilguard was that the team was pretty decimated, like kind of insanely so. Like, for example, every writer that worked on Dragon Age The Veilguard, every single person in the credits related to writing was fired or ended up finding a different job somewhere else. So like they were welcomed to fire. But the point is, nobody that wrote that game is still there. A bunch of the people that worked there in like a big picture directorial sense, they're also gone. Most of them have landed on their feet, hired at other studios and stuff, but they're not at Bioware anymore. Whether that was because they wanted to leave or because they were told you need to go find another job because otherwise we're going to fire you in a year, I don't know. But right now the team is like 80 people plus or minus 10. And so it's basically just a lean, mean Mass Effect machine. And the other interesting thing is that BioWare, and this wasn't really known, but BioWare as a company was pretty well split in two. There was the Mass Effect team, and then there was the Dragon Age team. And this goes back a decade, 2 decades. I mean, this has always been the case. The people making Mass Effect are not the people doing Dragon Age. Of course, there's some overlap because some like engineers will be used for both. But the core like designers and stuff, they've always kind of been separated. And there was, I think it was Jason Schreier reported on some of the inner drama within this because the Dragon Age team felt like the Mass Effect team could always get away with whatever they wanted and weren't interested in helping them. And it was just a lot of infighting. But what seems to have happened after Veilguard is that this whole thing is gone. So they like pretty much just cleaned house and trimmed off a little bit of this as well. So now you have a very lean, mean Mass Effect machine who knows that this is kind of all or nothing. Like this is kind of everything they've got. But they've given the chance to do it. I think EA knows that Mass Effect is such a fantastically huge franchise with a ton of nostalgia that they can, if they can deliver a solid game, it could turn out like a decent profit. They just have to keep the budget low or not ridiculous, and they have to meet fan expectations. Two very difficult things in 2025, but that's the mandate. So I think they understand the assignment. And honestly, Mass Effect, whatever they call the next one, I think it stands a much better shot of being successful than Dragon Age did. I always felt really bad for the Veilguard guys because, like, let's be real, it was a game that started as a single player game. It turned into like a multiplayer game. And then, or actually, I think it technically started as a multiplayer game, turned into a single player game, turned back into a multiplayer game, and then turned back into a single player game. Like it went through multiple game directors at each one of these spots. It went through major overhauls, and every single time parts of the previous version were cut, but then other parts remained. So each way down this path, they ended up, with just an incredibly high budget, even though the game didn't really, I think, justify the insane budget that they ended up with. But it was because they basically made 4 games and then released it at the price of 1. And that just, the math doesn't math, like the math doesn't math in that case. It doesn't matter how good your game is. If you spent $200 million making it over the course of a decade, it's really hard to make that money back. Like it just is. It's just very difficult. So Mass Effect, I think, stands a much better shot at being successful compared to Dragon Age and like breaking even and actually turning a profit, because Mass Effect is basically just on that first level. So they shouldn't have as much wasted time and money. And now they also have a very, very clear example of what gamers don't want them to do. They don't want like the kitschy, campy, watered down role playing stuff. They want old school hardcore role play. They don't want romances where the romances are just 2 characters drinking a cappuccino. They want it sticky and sweaty. I can't even tell you, dude. One of my friends we play D&D with, She's hardcore Dragon Age fan, like hardcore. She's played all of them a dozen times. Like she knows them backwards and forwards. And her like number one frustration, like she was telling me after she finished the game, she did like 3 playthroughs and then she told me all about it before we started a D&D session one day. And she's telling me all about it and she's like, yeah. And then she's listing off her frustrations with the side quests. And she's like, and I'm frustrated because in my second playthrough, I did this, but then in my third playthrough, I did the opposite and nothing changed. And she's explaining all of her frustrations over like no real depth in the role play and all that. But she's like, but the worst thing of all, what is with the romances? Like that for her was the final straw. After everything else, she's like the final straw, and perhaps it was indicative of just kind of how much the roleplay had been neutered kind of from the older games. The roleplay was what really did it for her. She's like, that's the one thing I can't forgive. Like, how do you screw up a romance between a dude with horns and then like a small dainty woman? How do you screw that up? You know? So anyway, I think Mass Effect stands a better chance of success than Dragon Age did. But I also think that it still is a tough spot to be in, because I don't care how good you are or anything. They are at a studio that has now had 3 back-to-back failures from EA's perspective. Like, they did not make a lot of money and they're doing pretty poorly. And their studio has been decimated by the technical term, which is reduced by 1/10. It was decimated several times over after Dragon Age The Veilguard. And now it's all on them. Like the Bioware legacy is on them. I am shocked that EA has still kept them open. Honestly, after Dragon Age, I was expecting them to probably shut it down, but they've been given another chance, it seems. So, but you better believe EA executives are watching that pretty closely. They're like, going to do story reviews and all that. It's why I don't think it's a coincidence that Bioshock, I think Bioshock is suffering similar things, because I had somebody reach out to me who was able to demonstrate to my satisfaction that they were who they said they were, and they were involved with Bioshock. But it was only one source. So it could have just been a disgruntled employee or somebody just making up stuff for the memes. So I won't say specifically what they said until somebody else verifies it and I hear from a second source the same thing. But what this person told me was that the narrative review that they allegedly failed, or reportedly rather failed, that kickstarted the studio director being fired, the game director being moved out of position, somebody else being brought in, a bunch of other layoffs and stuff. What this person told me was the narrative review. I will just say, like, if what they told me was true, I think they made the right choice, because what they had described to me, I think, how do I say this? I think we would have been able to make a lot of videos. I'll just say that. Like, I'll just say that we would have been able to make a lot of videos about it. So I think it was the right choice, is what I'm saying, based on what this one person told me. It could be that that person was mistaken. It could be that that person was just making stuff up. I want to be clear about that, which is why I'm not going to get specific. But if what that person told me, I'm like, okay, so maybe it was for the best that Bioshock got like a little creative shakeup, because woof. But I think that that's what's happening, is that a lot of these executives are like, so we can spend $100 million on a game for years and years and years, and it's an established franchise and everybody knows and loves it. And after all of that, it can flop because the writing is cringy, or because the writing is like too political, or this or that. Okay, we're not going to have that be the reason this fails. Like something as stupid as that, we're not going to let that be the reason this fails. So I think executives and people are getting much more involved. I mean, I'll say I've been asked and shown some stuff from projects that are in the works across the industry, looking for feedback, because they don't want to end up in this situation where they announce and reveal something and then they're shocked at the public reception to it. And we've seen it with even other games. Like there was the reporting that Fair Game $, they did a play test or something, and based on the reception to the play test, they shook up the team, and like the co-founder of the studio left out of nowhere and all this. And I think it's because there's a a clear approach now that these big executives and publishers and develop studios, they just do not want to end up in that situation where they're surprised at how poorly something is received when they could have just asked. That's what's always blown my mind about so many of these things that launch and are just so cringy. So I'm like, you could have asked literally anybody. You could have gone home, invited your grandson over, and shown him a clip, and he would have made fun of you. You know, like, there's no excuse for you being shocked at the reception to it. Like, because you could have asked anybody. Anybody could have told you that, you know?